Welcome to this PDST Teaching in Ireland resource overview. This interactive toolkit, written and developed by the Professional Development Service for Teachers, aims to provide an overview of some of the key developments in Irish education at primary level in recent years. We ask that those accessing this resource take a few moments initially to complete a very short online survey. The results of this survey will give us a sense regarding the audience for this resource and allow us to tailor resources for future use. Once you've completed the survey, continue down to the introduction. This will give you a general overview of the landscape of the Irish education system at primary level currently. Scrolling further on down the web page then, you'll see that attention is drawn to key government agencies such as the Department of Education and Skills, the National Council for Curriculum and Assessment, and the Teaching Council. You'll see by clicking on any of the links that are hyperlinked on the screen, you can visit that body's particular dedicated webpage. Scrolling further on down on the home page then, you'll be provided with the various support services that are tasked with ensuring that continuous professional development is provided for teachers at primary level. These support services are namely the Professional Development Service for Teachers, the National Induction Programme for Teachers, the National Council for Special Education, and Education Support Centres Ireland. Next, we are going to navigate to the menu at the top of the screen. And next, you'll see that we come across school structures and contexts. Simply by clicking on the school structures and contexts, we're brought to the home page, where you can choose to enter any of the areas that we explore simply by clicking on the tile or by choosing it in the drop-down menu at the top. Firstly, we're going to look at school contexts. This section provides you with an overview of the various types of state-funded schools that exist in our education system in Ireland. You have rural and urban schools, special schools, jesh schools, scolanna sa Gaeltachta agus Gael scolanna, island and hospital schools. At the bottom of this page, you'll be provided with links which will bring you to key supports should you require to find out more information in this area. Next, we will look at leadership structures. This section allows us to take a glimpse at what leadership looks like at primary level. Firstly, we explore leadership and management in schools and link to key supports such as the Looking at Our Schools document. Next, we look at the role of the principal in legislation. Continuing on down then, we look at the role of the deputy principal and assistant principals. And of course, reference the parents' councils and parents' associations. We also list the key support services which are tasked at supporting school leaders at primary level. Next, we are going to look at the Teaching Council in this section. The Teaching Council webpage looks at who the Teaching Council are, what the Teaching Council do, and looks at some of the key supports provided by the Teaching Council, namely COSAN, and of course the framework is linked here should teachers require more information in that regard, as well as the graphic. And continuing on down this page, we also note some of the innovative projects that are linked to CRE, the Collaboration and Research for Ongoing Innovation Initiative of the Teaching Council. Some key supports which are mentioned here are Using Research in Our School, the Online Library, Féilte, and of course Beacons, bringing education alive for our communities on a national scale. Next, we're going to look at newly qualified teachers and Droichead. This section is particularly useful for any newly qualified teachers looking to find out more information about the Droichead process. We explore what Droichead is, the requirements necessary to fulfill Droichead conditions, what a PTST is or a professional support team, and what is school-based induction, as well as the steps involved. We look at the evaluation process, and of course, should you require more information in any of this regard, some of the key supports in this area are listed here also. Lastly, in this section, we've listed some of the key education partners at primary level which are active in the current primary level system at present. And again, simply by clicking on any of the links, you'll be brought to that specific resource or support. Next, we're going to move over to the Curriculum tab. Simply by tapping on Curriculum, I'm brought to the Curriculum homepage. And here I'm presented with information regarding the primary school curriculum of 1999. We look at the specific structure of the curriculum, and we look at how each subject is presented within the curriculum documents. Should you wish to find out further information, you can access any of the further supports listed here at the bottom of the page. In our drop-down menu here, we look at the primary language curriculum. Again, simply by tapping on the image, you'll be brought to this key document. Scrolling further down the page here, as you can see, we look at what this curriculum looks like, both in terms of its structure in policy as well as in practice. We also look at how it relates to our 1999 curriculum. And of course, anywhere you see one of our buttons, simply tap on the button and be brought to that resource directly. And of course, at the bottom of the page, further supports are listed should you wish to require further information in this particular area. Navigating then to the next section in curriculum, we're looking at Ashter. Again, we're presented with some key information regarding Ashter in the primary education system, what play and the curriculum looks like, and of course, other useful resources and PDST supports. Next, we're going to move on to school self-evaluation. Simply by tapping on school self-evaluation, I'm brought to the SSE homepage. Here you'll be provided with key information regarding the SSE policy document looking at our school 2016. You'll also gain a glimpse in terms of the structure of what looking at our schools looks like, looking at the dimensions, domains, standards, and statements of practice. We explore how schools can use looking at our schools 2016 and how individual teachers can use this policy document. Looking then a little further in depth at the SSE process, we explore the 6 steps involved in the school self-evaluation process. You can see by the graphic on screen we've listed the 6 steps that are involved, as well as some key activities that you can expect when engaging in each of the 6 steps highlighted. We've also included some key information regarding school self-evaluation for this current school year and listed further supports. Still in the school self-evaluation section, next we're going to look at the Digital Learning Framework. The Digital Learning Framework was developed to help teachers and schools to embed digital technologies into teaching, learning and assessment. And as you can see from its structure, it is mapped onto the school self-evaluation framework. This is a very deliberate attempt at policy cohesion so that schools can use the Digital Learning Framework as their SSE should they wish to do so. We've also listed further supports which will be useful for teachers and schools in this regard on this particular section of the website. And of course, at our button at the end, you can gain direct access to the digital strategy itself. The next section in our SSE is the Wellbeing Framework. In this section, we look at the Wellbeing Policy Statement and Framework for Practice. Again, this policy document has been mapped to the SSE 6-step planning process so that schools can use this document to complement what they are doing in terms of their SSE or perhaps as a focus for their SSE. And again, we've listed some further supports along the bottom, as well as a direct link to this resource and policy statement itself. Moving over along our menu at the top, next we come across teaching and learning. Simply by tapping on the home page, we can select which section we would like to explore further, or of course we can access these through the drop-down menu at the top of the page. First, we'll explore the planning section. Here we look at some of the key terminology and aspects relating to planning at primary level. We look at whole school planning, curriculum planning, organisational planning, classroom planning, and of course, what is involved both in terms of our long-term planning and our short-term planning. We draw reference to the Kuntas Misu and some key points to remember when you are planning. And of course, we've listed further supports at the bottom of the page for more information. Next, in our teaching and learning section, we're going to look at some of the key methodologies which are typically used in Irish schools in the current context. Again, you'll find any resources that are hyperlinked at the top can be visited directly to find out more information should you wish to do so. In this particular section, we look at key methodologies such as active learning, the dialogic classroom, guided discovery, cooperative learning, and you'll note that we have linked some interactive resources here such as some good practice videos and also some PDST and key government publications. Next, in our teaching and learning section, we're going to enter assessment. In this section, we look at assessment in primary schools and what this essentially looks like in practice. The key policy document, Assessment in the Primary School from 2007, can be visited simply by clicking on the hyperlinked image above. Next, we move on to explore classroom assessment methods in the context and through the lens of the continuum of assessment advocated by the NCCA. You will see here we've also made reference to assessment for children with special educational needs. And if you click on our button here, you'll be brought to the Primary Language Toolkit, which will provide you with specific information in this particular area. We also look at how sharing assessment information can evolve and be quite useful for teachers in the primary context. We look at recording and reporting assessment and how this relates to the transfer of assessment data between primary and secondary school. Next, in this section, we look at SEN and inclusion. In this section, we look at special educational needs and inclusion in particular. We look at some key government documents, such as the guidelines for primary schools in terms of supporting pupils with special educational needs in mainstream schools. And we also look at the continuum of support which may be useful for teachers. Student support files are also discussed within this section, as well as links to further resources and supports in this area. And lastly, we're going to visit the guidelines section on our menu at the top of the website. Here you'll note we've broken this section into two specific areas: key policies, namely child protection, the wellbeing policy and mandated policies, and also some key strategies, namely the digital strategy, the STEM policy, and the literacy and numeracy strategy. Let's enter our key policies, and the first policy here is child protection. This section explores the Children First Act of 2015 and the Children First National Guidance for the Protection and Welfare of Children of 2017. In this section, key supports are linked, as you can see here on the screen, as well as further supports including online learning programs. Simply by tapping on the image, you'll be brought to the specific resource. Welcome to Child Protection Procedures, where you can engage in more upskilling and learning in this regard. Scrolling further on down the page then, some other key resources such as the Stay Safe programme are listed here for teachers. Next, in our guidelines section, under the Key Policies tab, we're going to look at the Wellbeing Policy. Here, and again this links with our previous SSE section, we look at the policy statement itself in a little more depth. Information regarding the policy statement is located here, as well as key links to the Department of Education and Skills Wellbeing information and the Professional Development Service for Teachers Wellbeing homepage. Again, coming up to the guidelines at the top section of our menu, and using the drop-down menu, we're going to access the Mandated Policies subsection. Here you'll find an abridged checklist for boards of management, outlining some of the key mandated policies which primary schools are obliged to have in place. Any of the circulars listed in this PDF can be accessed on www.education.ie. Simply by clicking on the PDF, you can see that you can scroll down through the relevant mandatory policies, as well as the source of this policy, should you wish to find out more information. And now visiting our key strategies. The first strategy we'll have a look at is the digital strategy. This again links with the SSE in that your digital learning framework, which has emanated from the digital strategy for schools, can be used as your focus for SSE or can be used to complement your focus for SSE. This section looks at depth at the digital strategy for schools 2015 to 2020 and highlights its constructivist pedagogical approach. We have also linked some interactive elements to this particular subsection, in that you can look at and explore some of the good practice videos available from the PDST Technology in Education to get a sense of what effective embedding looks like when using digital technologies for teaching, learning and assessment. At the bottom of this page, we've listed some key supports which you may find useful should you wish to find out more information about embedding digital technologies into your practice. Again, we come up to the guidelines and look at the drop-down menu for key strategies, and we enter the STEM policy subsection. This section gives us some information regarding the STEM policy statement 2017 to 2026. We look at its implications for the primary curriculum and provide you with a list of some key supports which you may find interesting in this area. And lastly, we look at the literacy and numeracy strategy within the key strategies section. Literacy and numeracy for learning and life is a national strategy to improve literacy and numeracy among children and young people and was introduced in 2011. This section provides you with some of the key information and some of the key areas identified for change, which were heralded with the introduction of this particular strategy. We look at how assessment was mentioned in the strategy, how reporting to parents now looks following the strategy, and we also provide you with some further supports should you wish to find out more information about any of the aspects, tools or resources mentioned in the above text.